Hey everyone, it's Tom Seymour from VHS Massacre. Today I'm going to be talking about a bunch of stuff, some announcements, but also I wanted to talk about social media marketing. By no means am I an expert, but I've mostly concentrated on making feature-length films, narrative, and documentary features over the years. But there's a few things that I've been putting into practice, and it may be of interest for independent filmmakers out there. It's a complicated time for independent filmmakers because it's you almost can't just make the films. You also have to be your own marketing person, and social media happens to be one of the free ways you can, for the most part, one of the free ways you could market yourself. And so it's important to utilize things in very specific ways. What I'm going to show you is not new. People have been doing it for years and years. But I just kind of wanted to go over some of the strategies I'm using and just to tell you some of the stuff that's not working, some of the stuff that is working. Okay, so right off the bat, some things that are not working. What does not work is if you go on something like X or Twitter and let's say you have something that you want to link to. Let's say you have a YouTube video or you have a blog, what you're trying to get people to come to your website. Typically if you write a tweet and then you have a link, those things typically are not and those are not pushed on the platform. Like most of the, this is going to be obvious to some of you, but it may be important just as a reminder. So if you're on X or you're on Instagram, they want you to stay on Instagram. They do not want you to create links that go off of Instagram. They do not want you to make links that go off of X. So in regard to pushing, ultimately you have to think about what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get people just to read your stuff, to read about potential films you have coming out or news that you have, one of the techniques that people use on Twitter and X is that they will post actual pictures, stills of the article they wrote and post it on there. So as an example, this little article I wrote, in quotes, just talks about using stock footage in documentary and some of the, how it's cool. Stock footage is great, but you just have to be careful to make sure that it seems authentic and, that it matches perfectly and everything. Then there's another article I posted here. Okay, so one thing I wanted to point out is if I post an article on WordPress, which is just part of my website, Tom Seymour Films, to be honest, I would be lucky if 50 people read it, okay? Now, if I put a link on Twitter, I said, check out, my blog, and put a link in there, I probably would get, maybe, 100 people that would, it would be an impression, but it wouldn't correlate to traffic. No one's going off Twitter to go to my page and read it. I mean, maybe 10 or 20 people, right? But what you can do is screenshot your article, and even if it's multi-page, that's great, and post it here with the heading. And then what you will typically find is that I think I posted this Friday, so I don't know, about 350 views, right? Okay, but you could take that same article, and then you could go to Instagram, same thing. It's two stills to Instagram. I think there's about 400 views on this here. So let's go back. Let's go to TikTok. TikTok just posted this. I think I posted this yesterday. 400 views on here. And then let me just see. Did I go anywhere else with this? Threads I did. Threads you'll get less, but maybe you'll get a few hundred. And then, so if you just did Instagram, Twitter, you do Threads, because you could share it right to Threads from Instagram, and TikTok. So let's say on average I got 400 on like within a few days, it's all going to be 500, and then a few weeks from now could even be above that. But let's say next week I got 500 reads on all that stuff. So that's it's 5 times 4. That's like 2,000 views, right? So that's a good multiplier. Whereas if you just kept it on here and you tried to post links and route it to your site, no one would go to your site. Maybe 10 or 20 people would go to your site. So I don't want to say no one. So what you have to understand about these social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, they don't want people clicking off of it. Same thing with Facebook. I have a decent Facebook page as well. You could post the article on Facebook as well. Although I haven't been doing that, so that's another multiplier. But maybe you get like a 100 or 2 extra out of that. So it's a way. Think about it in terms if, let's say you're a screenwriter, or you're like me. You write and direct. You do a lot of stuff. Let's say that you do some occasional YouTube, like I do. I do YouTube, maybe once or twice a month, right? But I'll tend to blog about stuff I'm doing because it's helpful for the creative process. It helps me work out some stuff. So what I can do with social media is you use this combination of like videos. There's a video I did. I mostly use Camtasia to make my videos with some of the graphics and all that. And then I have articles that can fill it in. So what ends up happening is you get, 3 or 4 pieces of decent content in a month. And that's almost like once a week, So the thing is, my primary creativity is featuring like films. So I don't want to be... I'm not like a full-time YouTuber. I'm not a full-time, like, influencer. Like, so I'm a filmmaker. So you have to find these ways to kind of multiply your content. So that's a way. You could write an article, post it across these platforms, and then what you could do, typically I'll do a video like this, and it's kind of a digest of the stuff I've blogged. So you can create these kind of workflows where you tell people what you're up to. Hopefully it's well thought out because or somewhat well thought out because you've kind of organized your thoughts in a posting, and then you make a video in the end game. And so that's a good way to do that. I do that with with YouTube videos. I will tell you, I can get across all those platforms. I can get I would say 2,000 to 5,000 views on a video. If I just left it on YouTube, probably 200 views, maybe 100 views. Okay, but if I take that same video, I put it on Instagram, I share it to Threads, I also put it on TikTok. And again, the key is, Facebook is another thing too. You would be better off uploading the video to your Facebook page, not linking to YouTube. Same thing with all this. So what you have, so my I added up. If I add up all my personal followers versus the VHS Massacre stuff, I have about 25,000 followers. It's more like 21,000 if it's strictly the VHS Massacre pages, and that's a decent following. So if you use the social media platforms the way they want you to, then you can kind of multiply your viewership. So if you're feeling, if you're a YouTuber and you're feeling kind of like bummed because you post a video and like 100 people see it, try getting on Instagram, try getting on TikTok, and build up your followers. I am not like an expert at social media, and I will actually, but some of the stuff I've done and some people will say don't do what I do, and that's fine. But I'm saying the way I gained a lot of followers, let's say TikTok, I have like 5,220 followers, right? Look how many I'm following, 9,906. People say, well, that's a terrible ratio. You know, you're following double the people that are following you, and there's definitely that's a fair criticism, and but in regard to reaching people, it does work. Like, if you look at some of the videos, the Sangria Video Game Nerd video, he was in VHS Massacre 2, that's gotten nearly 40,000 views. So a lot of this stuff actually works. And same thing with Instagram. You have to go into, look at the viewership. But I would say the most views I get are on TikTok, second, Instagram, third, impressions on X, fourth, YouTube. So just consider building out all the social media. You can get into a workflow where it's not such a big deal to post across these platforms. One thing to do is when you're doing the headings and the write-ups, copy that all into like a Google Doc that you can keep copying and pasting so you don't have to retitle stuff all the time. So that's something that I think is worth doing. In regard to the actual content, I'm working on this documentary called Video Dreams. One of the taglines is pretty cool. Where is it? It's down here. From blockbuster dreams to streaming screens, a filmmaker's journey through a vanishing world. So it's kind of like looking into what streaming has done to filmmaking, but also it goes back to basically the path from like a teenager playing around with VHS camcorders and the sort of mission to get on the shelf at Blockbuster Video, and what that struggle was like, and then what it was like when video stores began to vanish. So I think it's going to be a really interesting documentary. A 30-year journey, really. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, so that's what I'll typically do. Write my stuff on WordPress, screen cap, post to the other social media platforms. In other news, in regard to American Expendables, so I did a feature-length documentary, American Expendables. And November 12th, it's going to be available on Tubi, absolutely free, which I'm very excited for. It was a documentary. It was weird. It was started and stopped and abandoned and picked back up. But then about several months ago, I spent about 2 months putting this thing together and scrambling, and it managed to come out all right. And so MVD is distributing it, and it won 7 awards. Some of the coolest awards were from Montreal Requiem Fear Fest, Best Documentary. Also screened at Weekend of Fear, won the highest award at the Telly Awards, the Gold. It won at the Independent Horror Movie Awards. So it's pretty good. But it's about Cynthia Rothrock and Billy Blanks. Also features Debbie Rochon, Lloyd Kaufman, John Brennan from The Last Drive-In, Tim Kulig, and myself, and James Richardson. And basically it's an exploration of those direct-to-video action films from the 80s and 90s, and sort of their significance in the way that they films like that, they don't seem significant, but they kind of seep into the mainstream culture. And we actually demonstrate how that happens in several different ways. One example is Cynthia Rothrock was the inspiration for Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat, And Billy Blanks was definitely influential to a lot of other martial artists over the years, like Michael Jai White and several other people. So, very interesting stuff. Yeah, so I think that's about it. All I have for now. I'm about halfway finished with Video Dreams, that documentary. And the thing about this type of documentary is that the production and the post production are the same thing, because so much of it is archival footage. What's new is there's a lot of new audio and graphics. There'll be some new visuals, so it's going to be an interesting composition of different formats. So it should be very interesting. I'm already about a year into it. I was looking at when I started digitizing some of these old movies, and it was quite a long time ago. So I imagine I need a full another year to polish this thing and make it perfect. It's such kind of a personal documentary that I really think if I don't make this thing like super fun and watchable, I'm going to be in trouble. So one of the things about it too is to try to think of like a sellable angle for the documentary. And I think the main thrust of it was that as a filmmaker, I was never comfortable spending like a ton of money. It really, and it's not even about my own money. A lot of it was like getting investors and stuff like that too. It always felt very wasteful to me, which is, I guess, this is something that Roger Corman felt as well. Like, you just shouldn't need $100 million to make a film. But frankly, even over 25 grand seemed like really excessive and almost wasteful. And so what I liked to do was I was more interested in the problem solving aspect of doing low budget feature length films. Now you might be saying like, okay, come on, Tom, if someone threw you $1 million, you wouldn't make a film. Yeah, that's fine. But in that sort of fantasy world, fine. But if you're talking about like getting other people's money or putting some of your money in, and knowing the statistics of making a successful film where making back your money is pretty rare, you just don't want to waste. You want to be careful not to take advantage of people, not to spend their money, and to not give them false hope. And so, like I'd say 4 or 5 of the last films, I just funded out of pocket. I didn't have any investors because I wanted to do it myself and basically make the film I wanted to. And so that's what we did. But yeah, I would team up like Exorcism of Fleet Marish, that was known as Mark of the Beast originally. That was something that John Gorman funded primarily, a little bit from Tim Kulig and a few other producers. So like that was fun to put together, but ultimately it was a very, very tiny budget, under 10 grand, you know. But the point is like, okay, so what is the best scenario you can help for a film made on that scale? We grew up in this era of Robert Rodriguez's El Mariachi, which was like a $7,000 or $9,000 film. Clerks was like 40 grand, although really was more like $250,000 after inflation, when they had to fix up the film, redo the color grade it, re-edit it, redo the audio. Even El Mariachi, they had to dump 100,000 something into fixing the whole film up. So we were, in a weird way, it was sort of a trick. The version of El Mariachi that you and I watched was about $250,000 adjusting for inflation. After they did the 35 millimeter blow up, they fixed all the audio, they recolor graded. Same thing with Clerks. We saw more expensive films. You know, it's not exactly how they told us it was. Nonetheless, those are great films, and they were shot for that budget. So you say those were shot for $9,000. That movie was shot for $40,000. Another modern one, which I think is brilliant, the first Terrifier movie was shot. The budget is said to be from $35,000 to $55,000. That's about the largest film I would like to make, like the original Terrifier. Like that sweet spot. I think the low end would be great, 35, you know. But the things they did with that budget, that guy, Leone is his last name. He was the director, the editor, and he did the horror effects, which were incredible. So it just goes to show you it can be done, and you can do it yourself. You can break through, you can make a film, and you can put it out there. So it's very possible. But with me, like making these small films, you start to say, okay, what's the best scenario I can hope for? One thing was to be some massive breakout in the film festival circuit, and to some degree that happened with the VHS Massacre films. But back in the day, you would try to get into Sundance and Slamdance, but those doors were fairly closed to low-budget filmmakers. Even in the 2000s, a lot of the myth of like Sundance taking your $10,000 film pretty much wilted away after decades of them basically studios just kind of buying those festivals and using them as like free press for their smaller films before they released them. It wasn't, after a while they weren't even festivals, they were just marketing, they were corporate marketing events. So that being said, smaller festivals were a lot of times better, or truly independent ones that were bigger. But Blockbuster Video represented, it was kind of the highest thing you could aspire to given the types of films we were making, genre films and smaller films. So it was a really important goal. Though in hindsight, the mom and pop video stores were far more important to the health of independent film. If those were healthy, then you could make $60,000 independent films and make money on them, get them distributed. Charlie Band made a lot of those films. Roger Corman made a lot of those films. These sort of $60,000 films, 16 millimeter films that they would put on home video. But as the mom and pops went away, Blockbuster got real picky about what they would take. It became harder and harder. So, lo and behold, we did get our film London Betty on the shelf at Blockbuster 2010. But by 2011, 2012, it was really rocky and they started to shut down. So it was weird because we reached the goal. But then, that's the vanishing world part, the whole industry started to change, So it was very, very interesting. So we had to pivot, Anyway, so I think the film's going to be very interesting. And, that's about it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.